Hi guys, so let's get started. Um, I'm Razvan Vishan. I'm a co-founder and developer at Socialinsider, and today we're gonna talk about um, Instagram stories in our first series of webinars. So this is the first episode of the webinars we're planning to do. So one second, I wanna turn on the video. Okay, great. So I'm going to tell you the agenda about this evening. So we're going to talk about, as I said, stories analytics and some metrics, and I'll explain these metrics like the activity levels, the retention rates, tap forward, reach versus impressions, and so on, and why do they matter, and how can you measure them with Socialinsider. Everything is in the Socialinsider context and Socialinsider dashboard. Okay, so and then at the end I'll take some questions if the time allows. So let's start. What you see here is the Socialinsider dashboard, which is already loaded with our Instagram profile. So we have in the top right corner the last 30 days of data. So this is already loaded, and it's quite a lot of data and quite a lot of KPIs and charts. And let's see how can we make sense of everything, because it can be overwhelming. So the first metric that we're going to start is the total stories count. In this case, it's 27 and 5 in the previous period. So the previous period is January 24th to March 24th. No, February to March. The next one is how in which days did these stories were posted. So only 8 days had some stories. You're going to see later, because in the industry it's all, you can see get the definition of frame instead of stories when it's used in the context of 3 stories in a day. So those are sometimes called frames. We're gonna stick with the Instagram APIs definitions, so we're still gonna call them stories. So in average 3.4 stories per day. The next KPI is the average peak reach. So this is how many unique accounts you reach every day in average. So that's 20 accounts, and we know that Socialinsider's followers count is about 220 something. So that's around 10%, which is actually what we see here. The peak reach rate is, so that's the maximum reach rate, it's 11.6%. That's not that high, but this is how the platform works. The next is the average retention rate. So the retention rate is a metric that it works in the context of a story that has frames. So when you have a day with 7 stories, the retention rate is the impressions of the last story divided by the impressions of the first story. So how many people that started this journey of seeing your stories really got through the end? So in our case is 73%. So 3 out of 4. This is way better than in the previous period. I have to check to see what happened here. 26%. Although there were only 5 stories. Okay. So peak reach by day. peak reach by day. So yeah, one thing we should totally note is that when counting the total stories, post reshares as stories or older stories reshares are not included. So Instagram doesn't count those as new stories, and the interactions and the replies you get out of them are not going to be included because they don't consider them as stories. So okay, let's see peak reach by day. So this means you get to see every day the highest reach you received. So let's see, in this case, you on March 25th, 24. So a peak reach of 24, and the max was 27. Again, around 11% of our followers count. The next chart is retention rate by number of stories per day. So this answers the question, how many stories should I post in a day to get the best retention rate? So let's see here. Of course, when you post one story, the retention rate is 100%. 2 stories, we're okay. I don't know what happens here. What happened here when we put 4 stories, but maybe they weren't that interesting. But the retention rate really dropped. Again, it went higher for days with 5 stories, which is better. 7 stories, people might get bored. The next chart is actually, we can see in exactly what is the posting frequency. So 3 stories here, 7 stories, the most posted on 1st of April, and 5 stories. And let's see how did those stories do as for impressions. So 75 impressions. So when we posted 7 stories, we got 164 impressions. So the more stories you have, it's obviously that the more impressions you're gonna see. So replies evolution by the replies are, in the context of stories, are just like engagement in posts context in Facebook or Instagram. So about this, I have to mention that Instagram doesn't give access. So they do give access to the caption, to the hashtags, but they don't give any info in their API about any ornaments that you do to the story, like an AMA or reshare, or you put the emojis and stuff like that. They only count replies. In this case, the replies are 0, but this is a question across all the industry. So the reply count is very, very low. So maybe they're going to change something about this, because the engagement computed this way is not that great. Okay, the next topic I want to focus on is the hashtags. So we have 2 charts here. The hashtags sorted by their usage. So Instagram analytics was used 6 times, stories analytics was used 6 times, social media 3 times, and so on. So but it's interesting to see which were used the most, but the important thing is which one of those had the most impressions. So the top here changes. Hashtag analytics is first with 28.5 average impressions. So the average impressions are, we get all the stories that use this hashtag, and we average out each one of them's impressions. and it drops. This way you will be able to see which hashtags work best in stories. Okay, so another way we look at this data, the story data, is by story type. So the stories are in two kinds of stories, video or images, and you can see here 25 videos, 2 images. So it's not really statistically relevant, but let's see. Exit rate, let's look at the exit rate. 6.8% on videos, 16 in images. So the viewers dropped on images more than they did on videos. The next 4 charts are pretty interesting because they tell you how many stories did you publish each hour, and then they give out what's the average story reach by published hour. So let's see here, let's dig in. When this profile, so our profile posted the most stories and at 11 a.m. So at 11 a.m. the reach was 19. So people just arriving at work, warming up. At 12, the reach is 14. Another peak in reach is at 2 p.m. So probably people after lunch checking out their Instagram. Again, for the stories posted at 8 a.m. and 9 a.m., you see that not many stories published here, 3 stories, but the reach was pretty okay. Again, let's see at stories by published day. So we only posted Monday to Thursday and posted the most on Monday. And the reach on Monday and Tuesday is similar. So probably people want to check out their Instagram more at the start of the week. Maybe they're not doing something they like. And they warm up on Wednesday and Thursdays and stay less on Instagram. As you see here, the reach drops, even though we posted less. Okay. Another view is an analytical view of all the stories. So we have here 27 stories, and we can look at them and see exactly what caption they had, what hashtags, the impressions, all the numbers. So, but also we can filter by, I think, exits. Let's see. So 7 exits in this story. You know what would be cool? If we would attach to each story which one was that story in that particular story chain. So which frame was it? We should do this. Okay. Next. So other than we can sort them by all sorts of stuff. Let's say impressions. So 34 impressions, 33 impressions. Sometimes the impressions is larger than the reach because people go back and forth when seeing a story. So that increases the number of impressions. Of course, impressions are not unique accounts that see your story. Okay, and we can also filter by photos and videos. So as I said earlier, only 2 photos, 28 impressions, 21 reach. That's pretty cool. And the rest of them are videos. But the pretty cool thing that we can do here is as I said earlier, 8 days with stories, and this is the story progression by day. So 3 stories on March 25th and 7 stories on April the 1st, and so on. So we can see in-depth view for any story chain that happened in a day. So let's select, I think, 1st of April. Okay, so we have here some more KPIs and some more charts. Again, and lower you can see the whole story, stories one by one, sorted by date. So this is reversed by their post order. And okay, let's dig in. So we have a total number of 7 stories. The peak reach is 27. Let's look at this. So for the story number 1 in the story train, the reach is 27. The impression is 33 because we discussed earlier that you can swipe. You can return to the previous story. You can watch it again and so on. So this is why the impressions can be higher. So 27 for the first story, 23, 19, and so on, and it drops to 15 on the 7th story. So this is the retention rate. The retention rate is how many users, how many profiles go through your story adventure up until the end. So in this case, it's 57%. So that's a big drop. Total replies 0. So I talk with a lot of guys, a lot of clients, and yeah, I've seen a lot of 0 replies again. Impressions by story. Impressions follow a similar pattern to the reach. So again, it drops not as much, but in the same fashion. Average reach per story, it's 19 out of, as I said, 200 and something followers. That's again around 10% of the follower base. The completion rate per story, let's look at this chart. So a completion is an impression without an exit. So when you watch the story up until the end. So the completion rate is the percentage of impressions without exits divided by impressions. So it means how many of the people watching that particular story got through the end. So they tell you the drop-off rate of each story. So in this case, the first 1 and 2 stories, a drop rate of 11%, so a completion rate of 88%. Then it's around 95. So once they get through the first 2 stories, they tend to stick. So this means they are either interested or so bored they're just in zombie mode, and they would watch everything. No, I'm just assuming. Other things to look at is again slicing the data by video or photo. In this story chain, we have only video frames. 23 impressions per story in average. 70% taps forward rate. 6.8% exit rate, and full view rate is 23%. Okay. This is in short the whole stories view of Socialinsider. Another thing to note is that when you add, this works only for the account that you're an admin of course. You can see stories for and stories insights, in-depth insights for competition. They won't, Instagram doesn't give access through the API to anything story related for other than your own accounts. Another thing to note is that stories data are only available from the day you add the account to Socialinsider onwards. So once you add the account, you won't see past story data because that's not available. It's you can only see today's stories, and then at the end of the day you can get the stats. Okay, let's see, have I missed something? Okay, before we take some questions that we have on chat, let's see if. Okay, I have. No, we can take the questions now. Let's say. Okay. Okay, so it seems that everyone it's okay. Okay. Can we track the hashtags in stickers? No. I think I mentioned earlier that you can't only hashtags from the hashtags or from the extracted from the caption are available right now via the API. What's the taps forward rate? Okay, good question. 1 second. Okay, the taps forward rate is the percentage of taps forward to impressions. So this means so if a story has let's say 10 impressions and people tap forward 3 times, that's 30% of taps forward. So this means those stories were skipped by the people seeing them. Let's take a look here. Okay, taps forward rate per stories in this story chain here is 70%. So they did tap forward on 70% of the users seeing the story tapped forward. So that's consistent because tap forward and exit rate and full view rate are these three numbers are the exits from one story. So you can exit by progressing through the whole story, letting it consume itself, and tapping forward to see that saying no, I'm sorry, I got confused. Okay, tap forward means I want to see the next one. Stop with this one. Full view is when you view it until the end. And the other way to exit a story is by really exiting it by swiping down or clicking on the X thing. Yes, the higher the taps forward, the more people skip. That's saying I want to go to the next one. That's correct. Okay, guys. So thanks for the questions. You can read more on our blog. In 3 or 4 weeks, most, we're gonna do the next webinar about Instagram hashtags. So because the Instagram hashtags is a whole new thing, they had it in the old API when Instagram wasn't merged with Facebook. Now it's pretty different, and they give out more things. From one point of view, they stop giving out some things, and we can see there what's going on. Okay, you can read more on the blog, as I said, about the stories. Adina and Maria wrote some pretty cool stuff there. Okay, thank you very much, and have a great day.